Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Autoline After Hours. I'm John McElroy. Gary Vasilash, my co-host, is out traveling right now. I think he's on maybe the Ioniq 6 Hyundai media launch. But in any case, we got a great show to talk about, all things going on. And boy, has there been a lot of news just in the last week. But let me introduce to you the people that we've got on today's show, including Mike Colleran. He's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Nissan North America. We got Kalea Hall from the Detroit News. She covers the auto industry and I think specifically General Motors for the news. And we got Charlie Vogelheim from the Flying Car. Charlie, what the Flying Car? What's that mean?
Well, you know, I'm out here in the West Coast. I'm just north of Silicon Valley. Had a radio show here on one of the great stations, KGO, and we called it the Flying Car because that's the end game. I kind of, you know, with all this talk about autonomous and everything is like when we are all in that flying car, then we know we're done. And so it's really about the transformation of transportation is what I'm covering out here. And been some crazy things going on this week.
Well, that's got to be one of the coolest, names of any kind of group that we've ever had on the show. The Flying Car. I love it. And Kalea, did I get that right? You covered GM, right? But you're interested in the whole industry.
Yeah, I focus on General Motors. We have a whole autos team here, all female for the most part. I cover GM. I have a colleague, Jordan, who covers Ford, and I have a colleague, Brianna, who covers Stellantis. And we also have a DC correspondent, Riley, who covers auto policy for us. And we also, of course, have Henry Payne, our lovely auto critic. We can't forget him. So if you're not subscribed to the Detroit News, you're missing out because we do some great stuff.
Hey, I think that's awesome that it's an all-female news team covering the industry. That's a first. I don't know of anywhere, anytime, any place in the world that's happened. So kudos to the Detroit News.
Yeah.
But Mike, we want you on the show here because, I've titled this show, Can Old Fogy Car Companies Really Compete with the EV Startups? And I'm sorry, I have to, count Nissan in amongst the old fogies, but you guys are finally coming to the market with this Aria. And tell us what you got going there and how Nissan can really compete with that EV.
Well, this old fogey's opinion is yes, can compete. Been around doing this for, as John, as you know, 35 years here in Detroit and other places in the world, and yeah, we can absolutely compete. There's no question about that. But Aria is brand new into the marketplace. We're really happy about that. We started with front-wheel drive back in December, and yesterday we had our first delivery of the all-new all-wheel drive E-Force vehicle, 389 horsepower, 442 pound-feet of torque. So a real monster, a real beast, as Brie Larson says. So can we compete? Absolutely. But it made it sound a little bit like we're just new at this. And that's one thing about Nissan that is maybe different from a lot of the other old fogies that you talked about. We know the EV business. We've known it for a lot of years. As you know, we've been building Leaf for 10 years. We have a lot of experience, 6 billion miles driven, 600,000 cars on the road, no thermal incidents, and a dealer network that's familiar with the EV, knows how to fix EV, and knows how to take care of EV customers. So we're certainly not new to the EV game. We're just into chapter 2 now and getting ready to push the accelerator.
Well, chapter 2 is a whole lot better than chapter 11. but look, you're right. You guys were the first out amongst the legacies with a very viable electric car, the Leaf. But then it seems to me like Nissan just sat on its hands. I mean, we haven't seen anything for a decade. Now the Aria is coming. I've driven the car. It looks to be a very competent EV. It's going to be competitive, but that seems to be the problem with the legacies is they just didn't go all in, and now the whole EV segment is exploding.
Well, the EV TIV has, up until just a year ago was 2% of the market, right? And certainly the government's intervention into the marketplace has certainly sparked a lot of interest. along, I think, with just general adoption going along the way. But we certainly weren't stopping along the way. As you know, there was Leaf. There was the second generation of Leaf, so it wasn't just one Leaf. There were two generations of Leaf in there, so we hadn't stopped along the way. And we've really been focusing on Leaf EV infrastructure and building an ecosystem on EV that will really work well and is safe, reliable, and secure for our consumers. So, yeah, maybe a little bit more time along the way, but when you're thinking about your consumer first, maybe that's a good thing. And we've seen some EVs rush into the marketplace that maybe have suffered from moving a little too quickly into the technology. We've been a little more deliberate and purposeful in our approach to EV, and a lot more to come. As you know, we've announced through Ambition 2030 a whole new level of investment in Leaf, and we could talk about that, I guess, in a couple of moments. I won't go into it right now, but we were not sitting back. We were just very deliberate in getting ready for the market to grow, and now it is.
So, what do you think about this infrastructure issue? Everybody's complaining about public chargers, except for Tesla. Boy, they nailed it. They've got it done. They're off to the races. And, they showed a couple of weeks ago how they're now doing modular chargers where they build the whole thing up, put it on a flatbed, bring it to a site and drop it in place with a crane. It's amazing. But you guys must be concerned about this because, I mean, there's so much backlash amongst the public right now of complaining about these public chargers. Mercedes has talked about doing some limited network of its own. I think Porsche has talked about the same. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that's very topical right now. Everyone, kind of from top to bottom, is concerned with it and pushing to improve quickly. And certainly, the government intervention at a federal, state, and local level is going up, right? So there's more intervention, more investment coming. But let's remember a couple things. Americans mostly charge at home. And that's a good thing in terms of public charging, right? Takes some pressure off of the public charging network. That's not true in some other parts of the world where there's not access. But here in the U.S., certainly there is home charging structure, and so that's what we're seeing. Most of the charging being done at home. Now, public charging, absolutely. Are we involved? Yes. Are we interested in building the structure, helping build the infrastructure? 100%. We're in partnership with EVgo. You may be aware of that. We've invested, I think, $70 million here recently in building up infrastructure outside of home charging, and it will improve as we go. And not only will it improve, but the vehicles itself are improving. One, of course, the range is going up, which takes some range anxiety away and allows you to go further. And the car's management system itself now will tell you, okay, that charger's not working. We better go to another charger. And we just recently, it's a great story actually, just had one of our younger employees, while we were doing some of the ARIA validation, drive from LA to Nashville. No problem, except one along the way. Made it, no problem. Came across a charger was broken. And we see a little bit of that out there right now, maybe even more than we would really like to see. And working to fix that in many ways. But in this case, it wasn't fixed. Car said, okay, this one's not ready to go. What's the next one? Okay, 30 minutes later, charged and not charged, but on the charger and going back towards Nashville again. So no hiccups along the way other than one broken charger. Made it no problem. And I think going in, she was a little concerned, like that would like most of us, you have some range anxiety. And once she did that trip, no more range anxiety, right? I'm good. I know I can get there. So this is only going to get better as we go forward. And as the ranges get longer, I mean, the new Aria, 304 miles, up to 304 miles of range. So the ranges are getting longer, and I think consumer anxiety will drop, and we'll start to see more and more infrastructure come into the marketplace, because Nissan's not the only manufacturer that's working hard in this regard.
I'd love to jump in, John, if I can. Talking to Mike, Nissan, again, applaud to the point that early adapters. So the Leaf comes out, it doesn't have a remarkable range, but doesn't seem to be a problem for those that are anxious to get in behind the wheel of an electric vehicle, and they just plan their day accordingly. The issue that you're mentioning, and I think it's an ongoing and a pretty big issue for a lot of people out west here, is when you're really traveling, when you're trying to make that longer trip, you're going outside of your area, around here in the Bay Area. Yes, you maybe have to plan ahead if you're going down to San Jose or something like that. But it's really when you're crossing the country. And again, in the West Coast here, there's great distances between towns and sometimes even the chargers themselves that I think is going to be, I hope it's just stubbing our toe in the growth here that we're getting a chance that yes, these charges have been put in place, but they haven't been maintained. And whether it's a matter of it's offline, or you get there and the high speed one is offline, or somebody with a small car is hogging the high speed one, and you've got the trickle charger, so you're 30-minute stop turned into an hour and a half or something like that. I mean, it's just it's an interesting aspect of the growing pains as we go along, and I look forward to again, people like Nissan that had the Leaf out there, had the early adapters. Now, how does the behavior of the mainstream electric user, how does that change as it goes into public? I'm still waiting to see that from Tesla. I haven't. I keep waiting for the mainstream user to come, and we're starting to see a little bit of that. But not as much as I expected.
Yeah, Charlie, it's like all new technologies, I think sometimes, and I didn't quite get all of it. Unfortunately, you broke up just a little bit there in the middle. I think it's my side that's doing it. But I think what's happening is you see more and more adoption. You can see it in the TIV right now, rising for AEVs. I think we were over 6% in the last month or so, or just approaching 6%. People are starting to get more and more comfortable and more comfortable with the purchase choice for EV, and it's only going to get better because some of the things you're talking about are getting fixed because a lot of money is going in there. And remember that the charging business is not a bad business either, as we have seen recently. So usually when there's good business, companies, governments are willing to invest in infrastructure, and we're seeing that investment coming in pretty quickly right now. I think the biggest challenge for the industry, in my opinion, is not so much that side of the when I'm talking about the industry, the EV industry, is not so much on the charging side, but affordability. Right, affordability is one of those things that's on people's minds today, and we're working hard at that. And we started off with Leaf. We weren't necessarily starting off as a luxury manufacturer. We were providing EVs to masses, and it's our intent to continue to do that.
You say that the charging business is a good business. I want to question you on that because gas stations don't make their profit selling gasoline. That's the loss leader. You know where they make their biggest profit, number one profit maker for gas stations? Hot dogs. So when you go in there and you see that rotating sort of rotisserie thing, that is their number one profit generator. And then cigarettes and lottery tickets are fast behind on that. And when you look at the public charging stations for EVs, they don't have any of that. All they do is buy electricity at wholesale, mark it up, and sell it retail. And so that's why I'm asking, Mike, why do you think that the charging business is a good business? I'm still not convinced it's a viable business.
Well,
until they get those hot dogs.
Well, if that's all it takes, selling hot dogs, then our EV future is secure, because that's just not that hard to do. But seriously, you have a number of companies that are very interested in investing into this space. And usually investment doesn't come unless there's a good business model behind it. And we only know that, if you're thinking about an industry of, from 14 to 17 million, 18 million, maybe more in the future, vehicles, there should be a good business there. And it would seem that there's a number of companies out there that would probably raise their hand and agree with me on that. Not fully developed yet. And of course, in the development stage, cost usually outweighs revenue early on. And we're seeing some of that, no question about it. But as you start to see the industry mature, I think you're going to see a very viable case for EVs. And we already see, that battery costs are coming down more in line and heading towards parity with internal combustion. It's going to take a number of years for the industry to get there, but it's happening, I think, is maybe even more rapidly than many manufacturers might have originally guessed.
So, Kaylee, what are you hearing or reporting on or anecdotal or whatever on this whole charging things? What do you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I consistently hear is, okay, so we've talked about home chargers, we've talked about the public infrastructure along highways, etc. But what about like apartment buildings? Um, what about lower income neighborhoods? I thought that was interesting that Chevrolet did is they, if you buy a Bolt, they have a program that they'll give you money, up to a certain extent to install a home charger. And I think that program, as far as what they tell us, worked really well for them. Um, so yeah, and then the other thing that I've wondered if automakers would consider doing this is there is a fear of, you see a gas station on every corner, right? If I drive down the street, there's 4 gas stations. It's not the case for a, an EV charger. And one of the things I wondered is if automakers would do some sort of like way for people to test these products and experience them in their daily lives before actually making that purchase. I don't know if we've really seen that yet, but I think that would be an interesting experiment because I think that there's just a lot of people still very concerned about that. And concerned too about how much is my electricity bill going to go up if I do install this charger? And I really don't know the answer to that. So
Yeah, and I'm certainly not a expert in the electrical grid and EV charging,
yeah,
but what I can
me
tell you,
either.
it's expanding. As I said, we are seeing apartment complexes and co-ops uh,
Yeah,
and condo organizations starting to invest in that. I see it in my own neighborhood right now, which is interesting. So there is some of that that's going on just by local communities, HOAs, condo fees,
yeah,
all those things. You're starting to see it happen right now. And then, we're involved in projects, like I said, with EVgo, where, we've installed in city and we've installed on the highway as well. So, we're putting chargers in places where there aren't chargers. And I can't tell you exactly where all those are, Kaylee, but we are investing in that in that infrastructure now in cities and in the rural areas as well.
I got to tell you too, I hear this argument all the time. Oh my gosh, my electric bill, it's going to go sky high. And I tell people, yes, it is, but you're never
it
going
will.
to go to a gas station again. And you're probably going to save $1,000 a year buying electricity instead of gasoline.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
they
got
have to
wall
like
box.
see it in front of them though to actually know that that's real.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I have a wall box at home, and I'm super happy with it. And when I drive EVs, I can tell you that I'm pretty much doing fine from a total cost standpoint. So overall, John, to your point, it does balance out.
Yeah. So, what are you telling your dealers? Because we hear horror stories all the time of EV advocates. They're all excited. They go to a dealership. They want to buy an EV, and the first thing the salesperson does is try to steer them into an ICE vehicle. And this has been going on for years that we've been hearing these stories.
Hmm.
Maybe you guys have been at it longer and have a better track record at it, Mike. But how are you going to make sure that your dealers really start pushing ARIAs?
Well, we've been at it longer. We have a better track record. So question asked, question answered. So thank you for that, John. I appreciate it when when the answer's given to me. But certainly that's true. We have 910 Leaf dealers across the country, and they raise their hand to be Leaf dealers. They want to be Leaf dealers, and we have 1,100 total dealers across the country, but 910 have decided to be Leaf and now ARIA dealers. And we've been installing the infrastructure for years because we were a Leaf manufacturer back in an EV manufacturer in 2011. All the dealerships that we built in that time frame or renovated along the way, we've been putting the infrastructure in for EV. So we're not, the tools are there. The technicians are trained already. We already have chargers at the store. We now have Nissan has the largest quick quick charging network of any OEM that has dealers. Anyone that has dealers, we have the largest quick charging network. We've just been at it longer, and we know what we're doing. And so we've made the investments over time, and our dealers are on board with the investment that's required, and frankly, we've been able to do it over a longer period of time. An investment over a longer period of time usually makes a lot more sense from a business standpoint.
So, Mike, what do you make of? Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead, Charlie.
John, I just love to point out in Mike's answer, there's really four important questions a consumer is going to ask, and there's four bits of information that can't really be answered on any particular vehicle at any particular sale. And it is, where am I going to get the electricity? How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take to charge? And how far will I go afterwards? And we're starting to dial that in a little bit more, but there's that moment in time where that just couldn't be answered. Is it in your home? Is it public? You're paying part of a fee? Do you get a discount from EVgo? Are you, is it hot weather, cold weather? And I think part of the consumer's reaction to that was, you're trying not to sell me an electric car. And it's like, well, I kind of like to, but I think we all know, and if you think about it, maybe we don't know how much we're going to pay for the gas. We know where we're going to get it, how long it's going to take, possibly how far we're going to go. But those were unanswerable questions for a lot of EVs in a lot of situations. And we're starting to get those answers, and we're starting to narrow it down, but it wasn't there for a while.
Yeah, it's a fledgling industry, and but certainly those answers are much more readily available for our consumers. And frankly, when you look at the vehicles that are now what I'll call the next generation of EVs, very different from what I would call the early generations of EVs. They feel more car-like. They have more horsepower, more torque. The level of refinement, if you think about Aria, which I think is one of the most complete EVs out there, bridges very nicely between what I'll call vehicles that are so futuristic that, what do I do with this? How do I drive it? Do I have to drive it through a screen, or can I drive it like a normal internal combustion car, but it's EV? Aria does a good job of bridging that technology, right, with haptic switches that you can touch and feel. And technology that's relevant to the consumer. So it's very complete, very high perceived quality, which is what consumers expect in their internal combustion vehicles, but maybe haven't been able to get in their EVs up until this most recent generation of EVs. So we're very proud of the Aria because we think it is the most complete EV out there. And if you've had a chance to drive it, which I think maybe some of you have, and if you haven't, we'll get you one. Especially now that we have the all-wheel drive E-Force version, I think you'll be amazed. Not so much its speed, because they're fast; they're as fast as a Z in our sports cars, and they'll set you back in your seat, no question about it. But at the level of refinement and the level of intuitiveness of operation, which hasn't always been the case with some previous EVs.
I wonder if Kaylee's got the right answer here. People need to experience this thing. The auto industry has always known the best way to sell a car is put butts in seat and let people experience it.
I'm saying,
and with EVs, even more so. Maybe over a weekend isn't enough to know what's my electric bill going to be and blah, 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 blah. But gosh, I think just getting people in there, having them go through the experience of going to a public charger, using it, or better still, charging at home and waking up in the morning with a full tank, so to speak.
Well, John, you bring up a great point, and
well, it's Kaylee's idea.
Well, Kaylee, you bring up a great point. John, you did a good job of supporting Kaylee. We recognize this, and one of the things that we decided to do with Aria is institute second delivery. So not just the delivery at the store, but the consumer that buys an Aria today can, right there at delivery, sign up for second delivery, no cost to them. And we'll come out and talk to you and take you through even in more in depth, another test drive, take you through connected car, take you through the technologies in our vehicle, get you comfortable with a test, testing out charging facilities if that's what you want, So we recognize that I would say fear and the need to go a little bit further in terms of explaining everything that an EV can do, and what the car can bring to your life in terms of connected, and in terms of technological integration with your life.
Yeah. And I think you need that for like, I just think of folks like my dad, and I grew up with him, like always his head in the engine or underneath the car. And I don't see him ever purchasing an electric vehicle on his own. I think you have a lot to do to convince folks living in middle America,
Yeah, and adoption will by segment change. It
Yeah.
will happen at different rates. There's no question about that. There's
Yeah.
certain adopters that will take it right away, and then there's certain groups that won't, and it'll take longer. And affordability gets into that as well, because a lot of the EVs that are out there today and available to the consumer tend to be
Yeah.
a little bit in the higher price brackets. There are notable exceptions, like the Leaf and I think the Aria, that are in the more affordable brackets, and consumers can find their way into the vehicle and adopt fairly
Right.
easily. But different segments, Kaylee, to your point, will adopt at different rates.
Hey, along those lines out here, there's a little mall up the street that started with Tesla, and now has also Polestar, Lucid, and VinFast in the shopping
It's
center
a
right
shopping
here.
mall.
Yes, and
So do you go there and
you
like,
can go there. You can sit in the cars. You can, again, order them. You can drive them around the parking lot. Now, it's
yeah,
crazy talking about the evolution of all this. Tesla now has outgrown it, and then they purchased a now defunct Cadillac dealership across the highway, and is now moved into what, by all appearance, is a car dealership. They won't call it that, but that's certainly what it looks like. So,
Mike, I love this idea of second delivery because, anybody who's I'll speak from my experience. If I'm buying a new car and I'm at the dealership, the first thing I want to have happen is for the salesperson to shut up and me just get in the car and drive it. I'm not listening. They're showing you this and that. I just want to get in there. I'm busting, I got to get out. I want to be in my new car. So I think it's extremely smart. What do you come back a couple of weeks later or something like that?
Yeah, you can make it. We are very technologically advanced on our showroom floors and on our delivery. So deliveries now go through a tablet and car system, and you can sign up right there. The salesperson will take you through and say, okay, these are some of the features of the car, show you videos, and that's for all Nissans. But for Arias, you can also check the box. Yes, I want second delivery. Great. Can I set you up for a date? And they can put it right in there, and it goes into our scheduling system, and then we set up a date for that consumer, date and time. Or they can choose to receive a text or an email later saying, we're ready to sign you up. Are you ready to make an appointment today? So that's how it works, John. And so every customer that buys an Aria will get the opportunity to get a second delivery, no extra charge for them. And interestingly enough, we've done a number of them. Conquest rates are really high in the vehicle. They love second delivery. And the most interesting thing that we didn't anticipate is, can I get a third delivery? And I'm willing to pay for it. We're like,
oh my gosh.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. It was one of those moments where you go, aha. We have something that's working here, and Aria has only been on sale for 90 days, so we're really just getting started with it. But yes, John, it's about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a month afterwards. Consumer choice, really. In theory, you could do it the next day, but most people are choosing to take it home. They want to get out there, they want to drive it, just like you, John, just like me. But when I get home and I've driven it for a couple of days, I go, what's that button for?
Yeah. Right.
And I wish I had stayed a little longer and gotten that part of the delivery. Well, now you can. So, it's looking very successful early on.
Cool. Hey, look, we got to take a quick commercial break, and I got to run out and let the dog in the house. She's out there barking right now. So we're going to give a great shout out to our friends at Bridgestone, and we'll be back in just a few seconds.
Great. Thank you.
How do Bridgestone tires stop shorter on wet roads? It's their HydroTrack technology. But you don't have to know how the science works, just where the brake is. What really matters is They're Bridgestone.
Hey,
Well, John's
John's gone. Let's talk about some. Oh, wait, there it is.
dog okay, John?
Okay, I think the dog's back in the house.
Very good. Very good.
So, sticking with dealers for the moment here,
Yep.
all the startups are going sans dealers, direct sales
Mhm.
model. Jim Farley, CEO of Ford, says
Mhm.
he figures that's saving Tesla like $2,000 to $3,000 per unit. And I believe it's largely, a lot of people think, oh, that's because dealers have markup. But I think the real cost is in all that inventory that's just parked out there, depreciating and costing the dealer money all the time.
Mhm.
Where do you think this is all going to go, Mike?
Well, our viewpoint, quite simply, is we are going forward with our dealer network. We think connection to the community is extremely important.
Mhm.
Dealers provide that, and they provide great service every day, usually with very little waiting time and same day service. So we're quite happy with our network. They've done a great job taking care of our Leaf customers, and we see a future with our network. Doesn't mean there's no change. We're already starting to see change, especially from from the consumer and the consumer's expectations. And that's probably the next great battleground, which is a little different topic. But generally speaking, I would say that we're really happy with our dealers. They're going to be with us on EV, and they provide us a connection to the community that is irreplaceable, in our opinion.
Charlie, you mentioned this shopping mall down this road from you with all these startups.
Okay,
How do you
crazy
think
thing.
they're?
I don't know where you're connected, but I just got an email from the Lucid dealer while we were talking
Oh.
that says, "Give me a call. I was curious to know if you're interested in coming out to drive the Lucid Air." I'm going,
That's funny.
who do you know, John? I mean, you just like so.
Wow.
All right, I'm
They're
typing
obviously watching the show.
Charlie, I'm typing your
Yeah.
local Nissan dealer right now.
Exactly. Oh, here it goes. Yeah, it's interesting, John. Is again, I'm very interested. I've been observing this industry for decades, and huge fan and great loyalty to the dealer body. Fortunately, when you get involved in a consumer show, you hear of all the bad behavior that goes on out there, and all the people that are frustrated in doing things. But I witness, and I'm not picking on Tesla, maybe, but I'm witnessing to see how the wait time is really starting to build up, whether it's parts and service and things like that. That the customer service experience is again the realities are starting to set in. I haven't seen it overtly affect the potential buyers at this point, but I'm very curious, just witnessing there's behaviors that are happening to Tesla owners right now that if it was happening through a traditional dealership, they'd be going crazy. They'd be saying, "Oh, this Nissan dealer isn't paying attention to me," or when you're waiting 3 months for a headlight replacement, yes, there's been issues with distribution of parts, but it's beyond that. And so again, there's a real love. Mike, I alluded to you and the Leaf owners as being early adapters. Certainly that was the case with the early Tesla owners. Now that they're up in volume, and whether it's, a Tesla or as we're talking about, we'll go to Rivian or Lucid or Polestar, these non-dealer distribution points to see this is the most complex consumer item you'll get. And it's not to say that it can't be handled in certain ways, but I don't know. I'm looking and certainly aspects of repair, whether it's over the air or other things that are part of this evolution that we're all experiencing. But it's interesting to me to see just,
Charlie,
again, consumer relationships going forward.
So one of the things, and it relates to John's earlier comment and your comments right here, is that, if you want to have local service that's high quality and accessible, you need local brick and mortar.
Yeah.
And you're going to need that local brick and mortar in either model. And
Right.
I think that there are startups that are starting to go, oh, there may be more capital investment and brick and mortar than we originally thought. And I'm not going to get into manufacturers or anything else, but you can see it happening right now. And so those margin numbers may be a little bit different as we move forward. But consumers love to have quick service, availability of parts, same day service, in and out, and our local dealers are able to provide that. And our dealers are, I would say, really the lifeblood of our organization. They fight for us every day, and they're doing great right now. Our dealer satisfaction has never been higher than it is right now, after a number of years of some difficult moments way in the past. Over the last 3 years, we're now in the top third of manufacturers when it comes to dealership relations, and I think it's because either side we've been consistent, and they've been doing a great job taking care of customers. Right now, if you look at satisfaction scores, Nissan just scored on. As a matter of fact, CSI just came out the other day. Nissan at highest placement in 30 years. So we're definitely moving. And I mentioned it earlier. I think the next great battleground in this industry is for the customer. We all think of it as the transition from ICE to EV. I think that actually the bigger battleground will be for the customer, and we're doing a really good job in that regard. And more change coming in the future as consumers' expectations change. And a great example of that is online purchasing, which is happening more and more. We came out with Nissan at Home. It won a PACE Automotive Award for Best New Sales Technology. You can go all the way through from start to finish, including delivery and signing all your paperwork right at home. Oh, you want to accessorize your vehicle? Yeah, click on this, and we'll send the accessories to the dealership for the install. You can do it all online.
You know what you're pointing out, Mike, which I think I'm glad you mentioned that, is that the transition from the information leading up to the sale to the information after the sale. What I mean by that is the customers are coming in the dealership and they've done the research and they know that the size and the horsepower and the capacities of these vehicles, and they're looking for the price and the transaction at that point. Then they need help on the operation side afterwards with all of these ADAS, the advanced driver assist systems, connectivity, and everything about that, whether it's electric or not. And that's the follow-up that you've already addressed, to say, now we're going to do the second delivery. Now you've bought it, and we made that easy and for you to get in and out. And now we're going to show you how to operate it, make sure that you have all of your questions are answered. And that's the part of the follow-up that I think is so very important. And again, so congratulations to you for doing that. And I think everybody needs that. And whenever I experience a friend or neighbor, or somebody gets a car, I tell them to go back to the dealership in a week or two or a month or so and say, you go over this with them. I mean, I can sit there and go over certain aspects of it. But yeah, again, it's not just that button. It's, why is my iPhone dropping or reading text messages when I'm trying to be driving and things like that? There's a lot of aspects of the operation now that are electronic, or things that we want, and we just need to understand them.
Yeah, the vehicles are definitely more complex. There's no question about that. But boy, when you actually nail it and you know your vehicle and it knows you, life becomes so much more easier. And it's about to get a whole lot more easier as the cars get smarter and smarter and more capable. They'll be making suggestions on, hey, there's a Starbucks around the corner. Do you want to go there? We know you normally and the car knows that you normally stop for coffee in the morning. Yeah. So, I mean, this is the future of driving, and it's coming fast. It's coming very fast.
Still arguing with my navigation system.
Mike, quick question. How many of your customers now order their cars? I don't mean do the paperwork at home. I mean order what they want from the factory rather than buying off the lot. Because my understanding is, especially once inventory tightened up and people didn't have much selection, that a whole lot of them started ordering their cars. And I'm wondering if this is a sea change for the industry.
I think it'll change to some degree. But one of the things we have seen, John, is as soon as industry stocks started moving up again, which they have been over the last 6 months or so, I wouldn't say normalized, not even close to normalized, but definitely improving. You are seeing consumers go back to, I really love selection and I'd like to drive this car today.
Hmm.
The American consumer and the American market is a build to stock market. And there have been moments where build to order has gone up a little bit, but I don't think it's lasting, John. I think what's going to be more lasting is that consumers are going to start shopping more and more online. They're very comfortable in that regard. Most of us have had Amazon-like or Amazon experiences, and we like that. We like that instant gratification and, frankly, the ease of not having to travel and the less logistics, less gas or electricity to get there. I think that you're going to see more and more, and we are seeing more and more online purchases go all the way through. So when we came out with Nissan at Home 2 years ago now, there were very few consumers that went all the way through. And I can't tell you that the majority of them go through today, but I can tell you every day, more and more consumers go further and further down the funnel. So, from the initial shopping to the credit application, selecting the car, then they're getting into more of, I want to test drive at home, which you can do through Nissan Home. Just click the box and we'll come bring the car to you. Test drive at home. So that number is going up. So what's happening is people are going lower, lower, and lower in the funnel as they gain confidence in purchasing, as Charlie said, one of the most complex consumer items and expensive that they're going to purchase in their lives. But more and more consumers are going further through the funnel. I think that's probably what we're going to see. Now, what's really interesting about that is, and I said the next, I think, great battleground in this industry is for the consumers. As you get deeper and deeper into the vehicle ownership and certainly the connected side of it, the great battleground is going to be keeping that customer in your ecosystem. And the ecosystem's harder and harder to leave. There are days when I don't necessarily love this as a business phone, but I'm so tied to this company that I really can't leave. My ecosystem, I'm deep into their ecosystem and they're deep into my ecosystem. To leave is tough. You're seeing more and more of that on the car side too. And I think that's where the great battleground is next, is to make customers as a good friend of all of ours. I think Carl Sewell said customers for life. And it's becoming more and more of a reality. And frankly, the technology, the car, the ecosystems, are going to probably cause that to happen. So a lot more loyalty, less conquest. Take care of your consumers, take care of your customers the best you can, because that may be the only shot you get at them.
Hey, there's some other news that's been breaking in the industry that I'd love to get into, especially one that broke today. In fact, I've had several television and radio stations call me for comment. Kaylee, let's start with you. Ford Motor Company breaking out its financial reporting, including its EV business. And we know it lost $2 billion last year. And CEO of Ford, Jim Farley, is very open. They're probably going to lose $3 billion this year. What do you make of this? What do you make of this? Ford breaking all this info out?
Well, as a reporter, I value transparency, so I appreciate that they're doing it. I guess it's not surprising to me that they've lost money, right? I think their CFO said it's like an EV, it's startup, right? And so right now they're spending a bunch of money to scale up, and they just haven't brought in the money to pay that off yet. And so I think at some point, I think within a few years, they expect to. I know General Motors said by 2025, they expect their EV business to be profitable. They haven't done this extent of breakdown that Ford has done today, but hopefully they do one day. So I appreciate that they're doing that. I think it makes sense. It'll be interesting to see how they, going forward, how they handle like the breakdown of North America and their China markets. I don't know if they're going to provide that information. It sounds like they're not. They're just going to break it down with ICE versus electric vehicles. So yeah, the loss is not surprising to me.
Yeah, Charlie, what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting out here. We've been witnessing, and again, John, I've known you for decades, and I've watched these traditional companies, the Ford, GM, certainly Chrysler, Stellantis of the world, and they've struggled as they've looked and seen these startups that all of a sudden have a much more volatile hopefully positive, but it's proven recently not necessarily boosts in value, boosts whether the profits were there or not in some cases. And it's interesting I see the split. I'm almost trying to are we separating a traditional company from a startup type company, where again the upside is more, has greater possibility, but the reality is that, again, as Kaylee was saying, it's just the cost of building the business, of creating the business, and pulling that away from whatever traditional business they have. So was it Delphi that years ago that separated as a tier 1 supplier and tried to create again your traditional company and then your autonomous vehicle or startup type vehicle? So I kind of put it in broadly in that box.
Yeah, and John, just a thought from the manufacturer side. The EV business is going to be expensive to get started, as Kaylee just mentioned, and we've all discussed. No question about that. But this industry is very resilient, as is Nissan. And what will happen is that we will continue to push on development, and as that business develops, costs will come down like they normally do as you get better and better at something and you build scale. Costs come down, and this industry is really good at that. And I have full confidence that Nissan and the industry will navigate this well. It won't be easy, but talk about commitment to it, 100%.
So what do you think of Farley's move of report? To me, it's a really gutsy move, Mike. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really can't comment, John, on kind of structure, of profitability for Nissan and how we're going to, structure ourselves in the future. All I can tell you is we're working on the right things. We're working on development of, as you know, solid state battery, which has a lot of advantages over the current battery conditions. We're working very hard in that regard, and we see a path to ICE cost parity, in this decade, and it's achievable. And we believe that we can make this business profitable and be successful, not only for us, for our dealers, our consumers, and our suppliers.
Yeah, no, I believe that because I've heard others say the same thing. 2027, 2028, they think parity cost between BEV and ICE, and then BEVs starting to go cheaper than ICE. But Charlie, another thing that broke this week, Scott Keogh starting the new Scout brand, reviving it. And they announced they're going to build a greenfield plant in the United States. When I talked to them last year, they weren't sure if they were going to build a plant or if they were going to go with a contract manufacturer like Foxconn or Magna. And Scott Keogh said, hey, this IRA, what a game changer. He's comparing the IRA and the money that's going into EVs to the California gold rush. And what do you think? Is this going to be the game changer?
First of all, that was one of our favorite gold rushes out here. But having spent a bunch of time with the financial institutions and the dealers at the NADA convention a month or so back, very confusing. What does this all mean? How and where does this all go? And then as we start to roll forward and things start to roll out, we're putting together a selection of possible EVs that somebody might buy, and it's like, oh my gosh, is that one assembled in the U.S.? Is the Kia or Hyundai, are they going to qualify for this discount? And what decisioning is going to come from all of that because of it? And it's pretty confusing. A little bit of a mess might be the right word right now in terms of what that is. But to see decisions made at that level, effectively, I mean, it's having the effect that it was intended to have, to again, to bring jobs, to bring manufacturing, to bring assembly back into the United States, and then identify those vehicles as such, to the extent that again, it makes economic sense.
Yeah, Charlie, and Nissan, no different. We've already announced in our Ambition 2030 a new investment in the Canton, Mississippi plant. A couple new EVs announced as well as part of that. We believe that localization with IRA will be mandatory. You're going to have to localize to stay competitive. But there's a lot of rules that are still not clear yet, and we're still waiting on some of those rules to completely understand it. But I'm glad to see the investment from the U.S. government because it will accelerate overall. Charlie's just said some job creation here in the U.S., which we like, and we are going to localize as many of the other manufacturers are.
Mike, about a year ago, Nissan said it was looking at building a battery plant in the U.S. Can you give us any updates on that?
No, I can't, but I'll just echo what I just said. Is localization is important, and we are examining all options right now. But I think everyone's really itchy to get their hands on all the rules and really understand what the rules are gonna look like. But we are absolutely involved in looking at localization through the supply chain. Okay.
Kalea, you follow GM, and they seem to be doing the most thorough job I'm watching of the legacies of really developing the EV supply chain. Or is that how you see it?
I would say they've been the most aggressive. Yeah. I mean, they already have one battery cell plant up and running, and their Altium cells plant in Northeast Ohio, at a second one in Spring Hill is slated to open later this year. Then they have a third one they're constructing in Delta Township. There was a fourth one that was supposed to come at some point with LG, but there's been some reporting that has been put on the back burner. Not that there won't be a fourth plant, but it just might not be with LG. And beyond that, they're establishing the supply chain, like these contracts with all types of suppliers, to ensure that they have enough supply to make all of the electric vehicles that they've introduced. This year alone, they're launching the Silverado, the Equinox, the Blazer. They're expanding production of the Bolt, both Bolts, and the Cadillac Lyric, and then we also have the Hummer SUV and the pickup. So a lot happening for General Motors. This is definitely their electric vehicle year, I think.
So I'm hearing chatter that when the LG deal went south to build a plant, I think it was in Indiana, wasn't it?
Yes, New Carlisle.
Now there's chatter out there that maybe it's going to be CATL, and maybe that plant will end up in Michigan. You hearing any of that kind of stuff?
I'm hearing all kinds of stuff all the time. And I perked up when you mentioned Scout, because I kept thinking that Scout was looking at Michigan, and I think that they were, but they landed south, which isn't surprising. But we've got a bunch of battery plants of our own coming up. You know, we have, like I said, we have the Delta Township plant
in Lansing, right?
In Lansing, and then
Michigan.
You may know that Ford just recently announced a battery plant, a battery park, Blue Oval Battery Park for Marshall, Michigan, and that's a really big site. It's like 900 acres, right? So I think beyond the park, there could be some other things that, like, come with that. So I've never seen anything in my lifetime. I'm in my early 30s. I've only ever seen plant closures in the United States, especially being from the Mahoning Valley in Northeast Ohio. So for me, this is just like incredible. I mean, you're seeing plants pop up in Michigan and Indiana and Georgia and North Carolina, South Carolina and Kentucky, Tennessee. I mean, the list just keeps going. So it's pretty I think the pandemic taught automakers a lot, right, about how fragile our supply chains are, and when you're changing from ICE to EV, you just can't. That fragility, I think, is really a concern. And bringing these plants here is definitely going to lower costs, which is what we want to do, right? So I'm sure Mike can speak to that better than I can. So.
Well, I mean, you just said it, Kaylee. The investment is there, and I said that the industry is resilient and 100% committed. You can see it with just the investment level alone. Nissan has a lot of good company there. We're doing the same. and the future is bright for EVs and for the industries. But we've talked about EVs, and internal combustion is still very much here today, and still
Right.
94% of sales. So 9.4 out of every 10 vehicles is an internal combustion engine vehicle. We're still committed to internal combustion as well, at least in the midterm, and we still have new products that will be coming your way, and I can't discuss them today, but there'll be internal combustion for the consumers that haven't made the flip yet. So Nissan is got its foot in both sides, just like most manufacturers, and investing for the future. I think the future is really bright. You just saw, our most recent financial announcement in Q3, and you saw positive free cash flow, auto free cash flow from us, strong operating profit, strong net revenue per unit as well. So the future for Nissan is good, and it will have internal combustion for your listeners out there going, Mike, what's going on with Z? Well, Z's here. And if you want to go fast, we got a car for you. And I see John smiling right now. And John,
hey, I love that car. I love that car.
I know you do. And so this is my Z, but actually I have.
That's an original though.
I have a 240Z that I just
It's a great color.
And yeah, in this color as well. This
really
is black color. New Side Orange. It was the launch color. So 1972, and I just rebuilt it, John. It's a sweetheart, and internal combustion still has a place in the industry and in this old fogey to get the whole loop going here. In this old fogey's heart.
Yeah. I hope you bring that to the Vogelheim cruise this year.
You know what? I brought it to ZCon last year, and it was a huge hit because, of course, you walk out there as a senior vice president, and nobody thinks you're actually a car guy, and then they find out that
that you are.
I grew up on a dealership lot, washing cars, 45 years ago, and I like to get my hands dirty too.
Yeah, no, I love meeting car executives who are car guys or car gals. I use the Michigan guys, which includes everybody, but because there's a lot of execs who they're in the business for a paycheck. But one more topic, and I'm going to start with you, Charlie. This is also broke this week. Reuters did a poll or commissioned a poll that found out that only 33% of Americans are interested in an electric car. What do you make of that? And what does the industry need to do to boost that number up?
I just go back to, settling down on what the information is, the availability, the costs, again, those 4 questions that I said, if we can start getting answers to those, as Kaylee mentioned, just getting into the car. There's aspects of an electric car that are amazing in terms of quiet, the vibration goes away, on a long trip. There's a lot, the acceleration, the torque, the simplicity, being able to put, a 4-wheel drive vehicle isn't as complicated without not only the transmission, but the drivetrain going, putting motors in the corners. So there's a lot of aspects, and then over the ownership cycle, the cost of the fuel or the cost of the maintenance, those are all part of it. So I think it's going to come with education, John.
Kaylee, what do you think?
I agree. And hopefully we get some, I've been writing about $100,000 electric vehicles now for a couple years. So I'm excited to see some lower numbers. So, and I think that's coming, right? Like General Motors, the Chevrolet Equinox is 30,000, right? And the Bolt, they did lower the price of that to under 30,000. So they're out there, but I think I think that many consumers just think they're out of reach at this point, because what you see out there are the $100,000 Hummers, and other products like that. So.
Yeah.
And John, I would tell you, I would reverse it a little bit. I agree with Charlie and Kaylee, but I would reverse it a little bit and say, wow, it's up to 33% now. Just a couple of years ago, I think it was 10. So
yeah, really.
So actually, I don't know that only 33 is accurate. I would say
the demand's too high.
Yeah. Charlie, that's a good point. Mike, that's a really good point, because here we've talked about all the problems, whether it's on the dealership side, the charging side, the price side, the uncertainty, the lack of knowledge. Maybe 33% is a really positive number.
Yeah.
Well, considering we're at 6% TIV and 33% are interested, I think that growth is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, hey, guys, we're at the top of the hour. We're going to wrap it up here. I want to thank you all for having come on. Great discussion. I learned a few things from you all, so thank you.
Thank
I want to
you.
stick around for after hour.
Oh, stick around. But for everybody else, we're going to sign off right now.
John, thanks so much.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
If you like this program and would like to learn more about the automotive industry, check out our website at autoline.tv or look for us on YouTube on the Autoline channel.